What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 14 of the Weekly Wheaties. This week, I thought with school starting, might be a little late, but I'm hoping it'll still be helpful because there's a lot of time to go. We're going to talk about some tips for you to be successful in college. Now, granted, most of these tips that I'm going to talk about are definitely geared towards undergrad, but they absolutely will be helpful for graduate school. And some of them will absolutely be helpful for anyone in a professional field or a professional career when you need to take continuing education classes, or if you have to take any type of training for work, or if you even go back and take a class here or there, whether it be a night class or an online class. So without further ado, I guess they're going to be in somewhat of an order. I really only have like two or three, maybe four. But absolutely by far, no matter what comes after number one, my number one tip is always going to be to tell you to go to class. And that might seem obvious. And I know some of you are asking, why am I telling you to go to class? The whole point of college is class, right? Well, if you remember last week, we talked about your job when you graduate high school is, in this case, to go to school. So you need to change the mindset of a typical school day from being 7 to 3, as opposed to if you were in the workforce, what your work hours would be. You need to change your mindset and think your new job has hours, and your hours change semester to semester. But by and large, your job now is to go to class, whatever that might be. The cool thing about college is you get to dictate your schedule. For some regard, like there's going to be some classes that are only going to be offered at one time on one day and you're stuck with it. And if you're like a freshman or last to schedule, depending on how your hours fall out, you might get stuck with the last couple of classes that are only available, like an English 101 at 7 a.m. on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, for example. Or you might get stuck with a class that's only available from 6 to 9 on a Friday night. And you're like, come on now. So do your best to not have those classes. But if you get stuck with them, you need to suck it up. It's only going to be for 6 months at the most. So your job is to go to class, right? Go to class. I feel like I haven't stressed that enough. The first tip for you to be successful in college is to go to class. Every class, no matter what time it is, no matter how you're feeling, no matter what the teacher already told you you're going to be talking about in class that day and you already know it, go to class. All right, sorry if I went on. That's pretty important. My biggest tip for you as an instructor, as a former professional student, as my parents would call me, go to class. Once you're in class, you need to ask questions. People say there's no dumb questions and you can ask whatever you want. And then some people will say, no, there is dumb questions. You should know better. By and large, if you think it's going to be that dumb of a question, you can always ask it via email or through office hours, whether it's one-on-one. No teacher is ever going to say that's a stupid question, at least to your face. They might say it behind your back, but it's going to be in passing and it's going to be for fun. And if you prove them wrong that you're going to be a good student, they're not going to hold it against you. I promise. So ask questions. There's no stupid questions. If you think there is, ask during office hours or ask via email or through the forum, whatever type of board you communicate with your professors with. Just ask questions. Ask clarifying questions. Ask your professors questions about their work that they've done, assuming, this is a disclaimer here, assuming it pertains to class. So for example, if you have a chemistry class and your professor is a PhD, meaning you call them Dr. So-and-so, and you're talking about enzymes in class, and you did your research on this professor, so you know they did a dissertation or their thesis, they researched enzymes. Ask them about their research. Ask if they can relate their research to what y'all are learning about in class, or if they can elaborate on something that wasn't in their paper that would pertain to class or that would just be something useful for y'all to know. I guarantee you, if you do that, you'll get I don't want to say bonus points. You'll get brownie points. You won't necessarily look like a suck up. You might to some people, but it'll show the professor that you took the initiative to go the extra mile and see what they were working on and how it might pertain to class. And what it absolutely might do in some cases is allow that professor now to use that discussion as a bonus question on the next exam, whether that's an essay format, multiple choice, true, false, whatever. Now that y'all talked about it, it opened up the door for them to use it as an exam question. Some professors will do that anyway. They'll use their research as exam questions because arguably their research is probably in the readings, in the syllabus, so they want to see if you've read it. So this is kind of a way you don't have to read it. You can get them to explain it to you. And let's be honest, nobody wants to read a 200-something page dissertation unless it pertains to what you're doing. Speaking from experience, as a reader and a writer, mind you. So go to class, ask questions, get to know your professors, get to know what their topics of research are, because it might come in handy at some point. Not just for them, but for you. If this is something you want to find a career in, that these tips are definitely in general, but especially for the classes that are your major. If your major is chemistry, you should absolutely be reading what their research is on and asking them about it. Now, if you're an English major, you probably can skip that in the chemistry realm, but you should probably do that in the English realm. Ask your English teachers about their stuff. So that's more knowledge specific to your major, a field of study, but it could be broad, especially if you enjoy the teacher or you enjoy that professor. I wasn't a history major, but one of the history classes, I absolutely loved that professor. She almost made me want to switch to history and geology because of how she taught in that class. And I actually did go research I didn't read the entire dissertation, but researched what she studied because it was actually used in an episode of a TV show. Another time for another discussion, but I guess you could call it the second tip would be to find a note-taking strategy that works for you. You know what works for you. You know what doesn't work for you. This is the time to explore if you didn't spend that time in high school to do that. But you might be the person that needs to handwrite notes. You might be the person who doesn't need to write notes at all. You just need to focus 100%. That's fine. I absolutely suggest you take notes, whether it's handwritten or typed, because typing or writing and repeating what was said actually does something for you psychologically and helps you learn the material a little bit better. So whether you do that in an outline form or you do that by writing literally every word that's spoken, you need to be writing some type of notes. Again, especially an outline of sorts at least. So find a note-taking strategy that works. If it's handwritten, you probably want to use a different notebook for every class. That way you're not having to use multiple notebooks should you fill up that entire notebook. I was a typer, so I liked using OneNote. Another popular one is Evernote. Notion is a popular one. Notability. I've literally seen people hand type notes on their phones or iPads in the Notes app on their iPhone or in the Google Keep or Google Notes or Docs app. I don't suggest that for long-term storage, but if that's what you're comfortable with writing in, definitely use that. You need to have some other method of files or doc management. All these Word docs, Excel docs that you get, PDFs. Again, I liked using OneNote because you could drag and drop you could drag and drop Word docs or Excel files or PDF files in the one-line OneNote page itself. You could have a different notebook for each course and a different page for every class. So that was my way of doing it. If that doesn't work for you, that's fine. Evernote does something similar. Notion does something similar as well. I just would argue you stray from using the built-in Notes app on your phones or your computer, just because they don't have long-term storage durability, if you will. So find a good note-taking or file documentation system that works for you. Whether you're using some type of online storage like OneNote or Google Drive or iCloud, any of the online storage mediums. You need something that backs up your files as well. Which also brings me to handwritten notes. Even if you do take handwritten notes, scan them with your phone for backup. Some apps, depending on how well you write, can actually convert the notes to text for you, which can be very helpful. One reason that it's good to have a digital form of notes, especially if you type them, and especially if you do the word check and you go back and change abbreviations to full words, is because you can do a word search. And you can say, okay, we were talking about enzymes. You could literally go search the word enzyme and see all your notes where you wrote the word enzyme to see. And you could highlight it within that note taking app. Again, if you're trying to market to study for an exam or something. So I'm a big proponent of typed notes. If you do handwrite them and you want to go physically type them after, that's fine. I do realize that takes a lot of time. And again, if that doesn't work for you anyway, don't do it. You need to be comfortable with this, especially when it comes to studying and going back and looking at what you wrote to figure out what you need to study and what's important and what's not as important. Which leads me to my app pick, which is an app called Otter.ai. You can absolutely use like voice memos or just the recording feature of your phone. I like using this app called Otter.ai, especially when there's more than one person that's actually speaking that you're typing notes from, because it can dictate different speakers and you can go back in and mark, all right, this was Johnny, this was Susie, and it will do that for every time that person spoke. It can differentiate between the voices. And what it actually will do for you is transcribe it from audio to text. So if you do handwrite the notes, you can use this app to convert it to text. The downside is the free version will only do, I think, like 600 minutes a month or something, and then you have to pay if you want more time. I use this anytime I can in meetings for work. I absolutely used it in school as soon as I heard about it. The times you will actually go back and reference it might be minimal, but that one time you need it, it's awesome, and you're so grateful you did it. So please check out Otter.ai. Again, it's not a paid subscription. They don't probably even know I exist other than the side that I have an account with them and I use them. But I really enjoy that app, and it does a really good job, especially for being a free app. Again, you can pay for upgraded features if you do use it enough, and you'll use those features. The next tip I'll give you kind of goes in line with the last one, but it's fine. Like, start or join and find some type of study group, at least within your major courses. So again, if you're in chemistry, for your chemistry courses, you don't have to do this for every class, but if you can, it will be very beneficial. Prime example, it worked great for me. I loved it. The coworkers, the classmates I did this with, I think found it very appreciative too. Because what you're going to do when you get the study group is you're going to share notes from class. And I know what you're thinking, Garrett, is that immoral or unethical? And no, and no. It's not immoral or unethical to share notes. It might be to sell them. You're not going to sell them. You're going to share them because they're going to share theirs with you. And you're going to keep everybody accountable because you're all going to take good notes, which is going to help everybody take good notes. There's a really famous Steve Jobs quote that I absolutely love, and I used to share with my students back when I taught school, that kind of sums this idea up. Basically, Steve Jobs got fired from Apple. He went and worked somewhere else with a company called Next. They became very successful. Apple ended up buying them out. That actually ended up coming like the business or B2B side of Apple as opposed to the consumer side. One of the biggest things he did is he brought Microsoft over as a quote unquote partner to Apple. And he got a lot of flack from this. A lot of people didn't like it because Microsoft is a competitor to Apple, right? Well, you would think so, and it is today. There's a whole nother discussion to be had on like monopolies and that argument in the tech world. But Steve Jobs' quote, which again, I absolutely love and I share, and I hope you find use out of this, was, quote, "For Apple to succeed, Microsoft doesn't have to fail." End quote. And it could have been like, for Microsoft to fail, Apple doesn't have to succeed or something along those lines. And the argument was sound. Both of these companies can succeed because their target audience is actually different. But not only that, there's enough people out in the workplace and in the consumer world to allow both of them to succeed. We've seen that play out over the last 20 or 30 years, even 40 years, I guess. Holy cow. Wow. But the argument is you as a student in your professor's class, other students don't have to fail for you to succeed. You can all succeed. I will agree and know there's professors and teachers out there that do say, all right, we're going to have X amount of A's, X amount of B's, X amount of C's, whatever. I don't agree with that. I think that's garbage. Those are not good teachers. There's nothing that says these number of students need to fail in order for these number of students to succeed or anything along those lines. I don't agree with that at all. There's no reason every student in your class can't succeed. I would argue if every student can't succeed, it's your fault for not being a good teacher. You did something wrong. It's not the student's fault. You didn't teach them good enough. But the argument is, if all of you can succeed, why can't you share notes, right? And I have a really cool, what I think is cool tip or trick. I don't know if I stole this from somebody or if I actually did come up with it myself. I can't remember. So you could say you stole it from me. Teachers steal stuff from people anyway all the time. We borrow it, if you will. Start like I said, a study group. You need 3, 4, 5 people. Any less than 3, it doesn't really work well. Any more than 4 or 5, it doesn't really work well. If you have more than 5 or 6, you could split into 2 groups and then share your work across the groups. But the argument that I'm going to make is 3 people, 4 people max, 5 people max. Start a Google Doc per class, like start a folder for the class, and every class start a new doc. And you literally take turns typing notes. And you literally type anything and everything the professor says. And what you do is you take turns every like 5 or 10 minutes and you switch. So one person every 5, 10, 15 minutes is literally typing out every word they can for that 10, 15 minutes. A second person is typing and filling in the blanks to help, but also adding nuances like, hey, we talked about this last class. This is referenced in chapter 2. The project we're doing next week will focus on this, like any extra information that will be helpful for review, right? The third person is kind of looking at everything and maybe filling in some gaps, but they've given some permission to daydream. And then the fourth person is just like numb because they were the person that was just typing everything that they could. So we give them a pass for a little bit. I would argue you still need to pay attention, but I completely understand that after like 10 to 15 minutes of straight typing as much and as fast as you can, you're going to need kind of a mind break and just sit back and just kind of enjoy the show, if you will. See, I'm kind of tired myself from explaining it. It's been 10 to 15 minutes. But the argument is, once you create this long doc, you're sharing it with each other. You're each taking turns taking notes. So you're getting the best notes possible. You're filling in gaps. Everybody's looking at it. Everybody's on the hook because you know if you didn't do good at your job, it's just one of those things like people aren't going to want to do good at their job. And if everybody sets the bar high, the bar will stay high. So, last tip I'll give you really quick. I'm not going to go too in depth on this because I might in a future video, or a future podcast. Essentially, it's just make sure you have a good project management or time management aspect of your life and your schooling. Things change when you get into college. Your course load for this semester is going to look different from next semester. Your timing is going to be different. When you can work if you have a side job is going to be different. And college is still something you need to have a social life for. You're only going to experience it once. So you want to make time for that. And if you set time appropriately for all of your schoolwork, all of your studying, all of your research, all of your getting your notes all in order, you can make time to go to social events and have friends and go out to eat and just do whatever you do as a college kid. It's different as the years goes on, right? what I did would be different from what you did. But you still need to have somewhat of a social life, especially if you're living on campus. There's always so much going on. But you also need to use that to your advantage and make sure you're managing your time so you can put that in place and know, hey, I can't do this, or I can't stay out late tonight because I have this in the morning, or I have this class that I can't do that for, or I absolutely can't miss this course, so I need to prepare for it this way. There's a test coming up and I want to do this the night before, so I need to schedule these nights before. Just literally schedule anything and everything you can so you know what to expect throughout your week and your month and your semester of that school semester. So go to class, get a note-taking system that works for you, ask questions, befriend some classmates that you can create a study group with, share notes, time management, make time for friends, make time for studying, and I think you'll be off to a good start. If you have any other tips or tricks, I'd love to hear them. This could go on for a year, for days or months and weeks. A grad school tip might be different from an undergrad school tip as well. So I was trying to be somewhat generic, but I do want to kind of keep it short and sweet. And make sure you check out Otter.ai so you can record your lectures, if you will, and transcribe them. So till next week, see ya.